The story begins with a post-apocalyptic world where everything has been destroyed. Then the emergency alarm rings, after which everyone starts running and hiding. Then we are shown those monsters from whom everyone is scared. Monster races have crossed the dimensional gate and entered the human world. In the midst of all this chaos, we are shown the protagonist of the story, who is watching everything from a tall building. And when a monster is about to kill a child, he saves the child's life by killing the building-sized monster in one punch. And now all the other monsters come there after hearing the sound. He was just taking the child to a safe location when suddenly a monster attacks him, and all the other monsters also come there, whom he easily defeats. Then comes a monster who was the biggest of them all, and this time the protagonist had to face some difficulties, but he defeated him too in the end. Then there comes the monster boss, who is very different and powerful from the rest of the monsters. And they approach to fight on seeing each other. And at the same time we come to know that all these monsters are after our protagonist, and he is the reason behind all this. We're shown a scene from 8 months back when our protagonist Horniro was 19 years old, and he didn't know about his powers yet. He was an outcast and some students used to bully him very badly because he was a transfer student. Noro was very weak and he takes some pills daily. Then those bullies drop his pills and start beating him. The bullies were making fun of him being an orphan, which makes Horniro very angry. But then Lee Luna comes there, who is Hanao's classmate, and she is also very pretty. The bullies didn't want to look bad in front of Lee Luna. Seeing her, they leave from there. Nero leaves from there without saying anything. Troubled by all these bullies, he stands on the roof of the school and is thinking about his past and his grandmother when Young comes there and is scared to see him standing and tries to get him down from there. Young is the only one who talks to Nero when they are alone, otherwise they would bully him too. Horniro comes back to his class, where some students are looking at an image in which they had mistakenly captured a photo of a demon while taking photos on their trip, but no one believes it. At night the same demon comes out and we learn that he is looking for a key. Naro hides his injury from his grandmother, but she comes to know that Naro is being bullied in the school. That monster kills a delivery guy, wears his skin and takes his form, and comes to Naro's apartment. Naro was taking a bath at that time. The monster attacks grandmother on seeing her and grandmother dodges her, and we come to know that she is a powerful mage, and without her Nero knowing, she kills that monster and she also heals her wounds. The next day, while running, Hanaro collapses and sees a dream in which a man escapes from someone and enters a portal. Naro wakes up and finds himself in the nurse's room. Every time Hamero faints, he sees the same dream. He calls his grandmother, who asks him to pack her stuff, but he comes to know that his grandmother is running away from someone. And this is not the first time that Gennaro has to change schools. Hanaro was very weak because of this. Hanaro used to be bullied a lot. At night we see that this time many monsters come out and come back again in the form of delivery guy. The dogs start barking at them, due to which the grandmother comes to know in advance and she quickly sends her Nero to school. He gets surprised to see so many delivery guys while going out. He gets suspicious, but he ignores and moves on. Nero is about to leave when he sees a delivery guy falling from above. He panics, thinking about his grandmother, and runs upstairs. But as the lift is not working, he goes through the stairs. And on the other hand, his grandmother is single-handedly fighting so many monsters, yet she was overpowering them. Only then do we see a special type of monster who calls her a Sana, and they knew each other. He tells Sana that it's useless to hold on. Soon the king's troops will come. They start fighting and he asks her to give him the key. Sana asks him about the king. Then Naro comes at the door and Sana lets her guard down, and taking advantage of that, the monster attacks Sana. And now that monster also comes to know that Gennaro is the key, due to which Sana gets very angry and kills him. But a monster had taken Hanaro hostage. It threatens to kill him. Due to this, Sana gets angry, but that monster cuts one of her hands off. After that, Naro tries to bite that monster. Then that monster slams him against the wall. Sinai tries to help Gennaro, but the monster kills Sinai when he gets the chance. Porniro tries to attack, but the monster kills him first. But Senna was not dead yet. She becomes furious and killed that monster. Naro gets the same dream again, but this time it was very detailed. We are shown a battlefield where a war is going on between monsters and humans, in which monsters win. We again see the same human running away. This is Senna, who is running away from the battlefield with Naro. A woman asks Senna to take care of Naro, and Senna jumps into the portal with Naro. Naro hears someone's voice in his dream that says, "Don't die, Naro." Naro remembers that he has heard this voice somewhere. After that, Naro starts thinking about an incident in his past where he was beating a kid because he was telling him, "You don't have a mom." That kid's mother comes there and scolds Naro and goes away, and Naro starts crying there. Senna starts crying, seeing Naro in this situation. So now was the head guard, and she locked Naro's powers to save Naro. Now, seeing Naro in the face of death, Senna decides to return Naro's powers back to him. All the vitality she had left, she puts it into Naro's body. And with that, Naro's powers start getting back. But sadly, this was the end of Senna's life. She says her last goodbye to Nero. And by the time Meryl wakes up, Senna was already gone. It's been 1 month since then. We are shown a police station. Naro has been continuously searching for Senna for the past month. And the officer there also gets annoyed by his repeated visits to the police station. No one believes the words of Naro. Naro makes a sketch of that monster and shows it to the officer. The officer thinks that Naro is playing a prank on him, and the officer gets angry. Naro comes back disappointed from there. Naro inquires around, but no one knows anything about it, and there is no record on CCTV also. Now he also thinks maybe it was not real, but one thing is for sure, his grandmother disappeared. The next day he goes to school for the first time in a month. The principal assures him that he would try to stop any kind of rumors from spreading. Young was standing outside the principal office. Only then does Naro feel that someone is watching him. And the rest of the students in the school field are talking about how Nora's whole vibe has changed. He looks stronger and different than before. Naro again feels like someone is watching him. Later, he again feels the same presence behind him. This time, he tries to find out secretly. Turns out it was Lee Luna. She asks him why he doesn't take his medication anymore. Even Nero himself hadn't realized until now. He hears something and runs away without saying anything. He ran because he heard those bullies coming. Lee Luna was happy for him. Coming home, Naro sees Luna working at a convenience store which was near his house. He thinks of saying hello to her, but after realizing what had happened earlier, he decides to ignore her. But he stops to help an old lady in need. At the same time, 2 of his bullies also arrive there for cigarettes. Luna asks for their ID and declines to sell cigarettes to a minor. He threatens her and leaves the store. They try to get that old lady to buy cigarettes for them, and when she doesn't agree, they start messing up her possessions. When Nero sees them, he asks them to stop bothering her. They mock him for his bravado. When Nero sees what they had done to that old lady's belongings, he becomes furious. They take him to an isolated place to beat him while one of them was keeping watch. As they start beating him, he gets angrier and finally reaching his limit, he snaps and breaks his leg. His eyes start glowing and he runs away from there. Nero himself was in shock after what happened. Then he realizes these things started happening to his body since the day when the monsters attacked his house. The next day at school, everyone was talking about the incident that got one of the bullies hospitalized. The other bully who was with him that day comes to Naro and starts shouting at him that how because of him his friend is now in the hospital. Naro apologizes for that, but he gets even more furious. Young tries to calm him down, but that bully threatens to kill him and Naro again snaps. Seeing him in that state again, he realizes last night wasn't a trick. He gets scared by him and walks away. During a night he goes to a rooftop of a factory and tries to find out if he is really strong. He tries to lift a heavy metal object, but he wasn't able to lift it. As he was about to give up, he notices that he was able to bend the iron metal. So he tries to lift it again, and this time he was able to lift it. The next day, the bully comes to school with his broken leg. He was scared of Naro and tries to not cause any scene. During lunchtime, Sanso and the bully offers Luna to eat lunch with him, but she ignores him and goes to eat with Naro and even shares her lunch with him. Everyone starts wondering if they are dating. Sunsen becomes furious and starts his own friend for getting beaten up by a loser. During their argument, Luna comes there and challenges Sansoen. If he is not scared, then prove it by defeating Nero in a one-on-one fight. At first he ignores it, but when Luna pushes him a little further, he agrees to the challenge. Everyone was excited about the match. Everyone was there not expecting Nero to really show up, but when he shows up, everyone starts saying that he has gone insane. Sunsen was confident that he would win, so he lets Naro get the first hit. He hadn't even finished his sentence yet, and Naro pinches him, knocking him unconscious and says get up. It hasn't even started. Everyone stood there, shocked, scared, and confused about what just happened, while Naro was brutally beating him. The bully begs him to stop, to which he replies that he wouldn't kill him. Cold breath comes out of his mouth and the bully collapses. Luna was watching all this from the rooftop, saying, as expected, it was him, indicating she already knew that he was special. At Naro's apartment, a monster was trying to get inside. When Naro was coming from school, his friend stops him on the way and give him the bag that he had forgotten at school. He says to Naro that he had changed a lot. While coming back to his apartment, Naro keeps thinking about what his friend said about him being different now. The monster was still inside the room, searching for something when it hears Naro coming back. Naro turns on the light, but the monster was nowhere to be seen. It was hiding right above him. Naro notices the plant in his house and starts watering it. As the monster attacks him from behind, he throws the pot at it. He could sense it all the way from the elevator. The monster asks him who was he and attacks him. Keep in mind that these monsters still have no idea that he was the key. The monster attacks him, destroying his whole apartment in the process. Naro dodges its attack without much effort. He grabs its arm and breaks it. The monster screams in pain and says to him that he was not a human. Naro's eyes start glowing again. The monster sacrificed its arm to run away from there and jumps through the window. The monster was confused because he gave a human smell, so how could he be so strong? Naro also jumps from his apartment and kicks him in the face, and he falls into the bushes. When Naro comes down, he was already gone, but he could still track it by its pungent smell. The monster was terrified and was wondering about his identity. It knows no matter what he couldn't defeat him in a fight. His only option was to run away from him as soon as possible and make his identity known to the other demons and the Demon King. As it was thinking all this, Naro catches up to him, causing it to fall back. The monster used his blades to stab onto the table and attacks Naro. Naro breaks the table, but it wasn't to hurt him, it was to distract him. Meanwhile, the monster ran as fast as it could from there. Naro was surprised to see how quickly it ran from there. Naro uses the tent as a weapon and throws it as hard as he could at the monster. The monster looks behind to see what was coming, but gets stabbed by the umbrella and was not able to move now. The monster asks him again in pain who he was, but Naro says to him that he'd be the one asking questions this time. He asks the monster why it came there while piercing the tent deeper inside it. It says that it was Hisona. They're combatants that came to look for Sona a month ago, when they didn't make it back to the demon world. This monster came here to find out what happened to them. Naro asks it why it was after his grandma. The monster was shocked to hear him call Sona his grandma, and asks again who he was. Naro gets angry at it for keeps asking the same question over and over again when he clearly told it that he'd be the one asking the questions. He starts piercing it more and asks it again why it was after Sona. It told him that she ran away with the key, and Coom wants them to find it, so he keeps sending them over. Naro asks it where the other monsters are. It told him that they were on the other side of the portal, in the demon world. Then it says if he wasn't a demon himself. Naro gets angry and says that he wasn't a monster like it. The monster laughs at him and says, "Are you sure you are a human?" Naro now realizes the flames that were coming out of his hands. He sees himself in a mirror and wonders if he really was a monster. Seeing him distracted, the monster was able to escape there. The monster escapes through a manhole. Naro was running in the rain, searching for it. He trips and falls to the ground. A woman asks him if he was okay. The kid with her gets scared to see his face glowing like that. Naro runs away from there. Beyond the portal, in the demon world, that monster comes out of the portal all injured. We see the hall of the Demon King, Coom. The monster was trembling with fear. The priest orders him to speak about his discovery. It tells him about Sona being dead and the young man he fought. They were curious about this young man. The monster told them that he had the features of that traitor, and he seems to be unaware of his identity. The priest asks him why didn't he bring him there, to which he replies that he was too strong for him to handle alone. The priest gets angry at the monster for running away and not him with it. It says that his breath was so cold that even the slightest touch of air he exhaled made his entire body freeze. The demon by the Demon King's side was interested now. This demon was the demon general, Chen. He asked the monster if he was sure about him breathing cold air. The monster replies it was like cold fire. Chen removes his head from his body and kills it. The priest starts yelling that there was no way he has the power of cold fire, although it was something that the eldest son had, but there's no way it would remain. General agrees with him but warns him not to raise his voice like that ever again, or he would kill him. After hearing all this, they conclude that the king's descendant was alive. Since the dawn of time, humans and monsters have constantly been in at war. The gap between the passages of the world has expanded, and countless victims have been smeared with blood. All of a sudden, all the passages leading to the human world close after the war. Time passed. To humans, monsters had become a legend of myth, but the boundaries have started to crack. All of those entrances that have been sealed before are now filled with holes. In the human world, Noro comes running to the police station. They had found some footage during their survey, and she fits the description of his grandmother. Noro's eyes get teary when he recognizes it's his grandmother. The police tell him that the place is famous for its medicine. Noro realizes the medicines his grandmother used to give him. She must have been buying them from that market. He asks them for the address and runs to that market. They told him that it had been 2 months since this footage was taken. He wouldn't find anything there now, but he goes there anyway. He arrives at the market and the market was huge. He was looking for the pharmacy that had sold that medicine. He tries to track that pharmacy by the smell of that medicine which he had been taking for years. It was faint, but he was able to track it down. He asks the man there for the medicine. The man was not looking like your regular person. The man asks, "Medicine for who?" To which he replies, "Sona." The man stops working and told him to wait there. Noro realizes something and goes inside. He sees him running away. Noro chases him, but the man was fast for his age. Noro uses the wall as a support and gets in front of him and asks him to stop. As the man was going to attack him, he yells that Sona was his grandmother. The man stops after hearing this. Noro shows him the medicine. The old man told him that this was a suppressant. There are some side effects, but it prevents the demonic powers from showing. Demons whose strength has diminished need this kind of medicine to live and hide in this world. The old man was one of them. Sona had told him to give it to Noro if he comes there. Noro asks if it stops you from becoming a monster. The man tells him that they were not monsters, they were demons. The man wonders why Sane took this kid and crossed the gap. Just who is this kid? Noro asks him to tell him everything he knows about her grandma. His mother, Sona, was the greatest warrior in the Demon Kingdom. As the general of the royal guard, she served the empress closely. One day the king's younger brother, Kum, had raised an army and breached the palace. It was the war between demons. Many who tried to protect the king had merely become ashes and perished. And in the end, the king and the queen fell. Kum sacrificed thousands of his brother's followers as he took the throne, and the only few who had survived came to this human world. Noro was surprised to hear that there are more demons like the old man. They always live in hiding. Kum kept dispatching combatants to kill them, the last followers of the king. And now Noro was the one they were after. And that's the reason the old man ran as soon as he saw Noro, thinking he was one of those monsters. The old man told him that they were trying to take something that Sona was holding. Even if she was being chased, she would still keep coming there for medicine. But she didn't come this time. The old man asks Noro if something happened to her. Noro couldn't stop his tears and started crying. The old man assumes what must have happened. The old man told him that those guys would not give up and that they would come after him soon. In the next scene, Noro was standing on top of a building and thinks about his past. He doesn't care if he was a human or a demon. The only thing that mattered to him was that they had killed his grandmother. And now he was not gonna cower as he did in the past anymore. Now all he cared to take revenge on those demons who killed his grandma. In the demon world, the dimensional gap used to link the human world, we see the Demon King Kum and General Chen who were flying near the portal. They have sent hundreds of combatants to kill Sona and retrieve the key, but none of them succeeded. They lost their life instead by Sena's hand. That's why this portal is called Entrance of Death. The Demon King says that once the portal opens, he would wipe out and conquer the human world without any injury. General agrees with him and says that Sona definitely left the key to open this portal to the late son's kid. He was talking about Noro. He was the key to opening this portal and the son of the late king. The Demon King orders him to give them chaos and find that kid. Now the power that kept the portal disappeared, and all of the entrances have closed. However, they would forever remember the cold fire that never died out. Naro was organizing all of his grandma's possessions. He finds an old image of him and her, and says no matter where she came from, no matter what her identity was, she would always be his grandma. At the school, it was yesterday that he beat that bully. The news about him beating Gensanken had spread. He was hoping there wouldn't be any strange rumors about him. When he enters the class, all eyes were on him, looking at him. Noro starts getting nervous, then a girl greets him. He was surprised because they never talked to him, because they were afraid of getting bullied. Everyone started to greet him and acknowledge him. Noro started to space out seeing all this. His friend Jingyong comes from behind and snaps him out of it. Now that those bullies were not bothering them, everyone in the class seems more cheerful. Lee Luna comes there and asks Naro to meet her after school. Naro was about to say why should he. Yungyong cuts him off and answers for him saying he would go for sure. Naro asks him why he was answering for him. He says he knew this would happen ever since that time at the cafeteria. Noro doesn't understand what he was saying. Jingyong congratulates him on being a normie like him and the rest of them. Noro also decides to live a normal high school life for a while. In the back alley of the school, Gunsorn was beating all those students who were spreading the rumors about him being beaten up by Naro. They used to call Naro Dogro. He says a dog who bites should be put down, and they make a plan to beat him. They were forcing Jingyong to bring Naro to them and were saying that they wanted to apologize to him for what they had done to him in the past. But Jingyong knew what their plan was and denied to do what he wanted. Gunsorn starts beating him brutally for looking down at him. He even crushes his fingers, making him scream in pain. Gunsorn says that he brought this on himself and all of this was because of Naro. He was trying to intimidate Jingyong, but he punches him with his trembling hand and calls him a stupid bully. Gunsorn was now enraged and started beating him more brutally. Noro was worried because Jingyong is not the type of guy who skips class. It was lunchtime, and when Noro was getting out of the class, he meets Jingyong. He was covered in bruises. Noro was shocked to see this. He takes him to the nurse's office. Jingyong tries to assure Noro, saying he was all right and that he also punched the bully, so there wasn't anything to worry about. But Noro was angry at them and was going to beat them. But Jingyong stops him. After school, Lee Luna comes to Noro. She was complaining because he didn't show up when she had asked him to. Noro tries to avoid her for now because he was going with those bullies. Luna was suspicious of them. Some strange men wearing strange coats were roaming the school ground. The bullies take him to a shady location, and as soon as he enters the room, a few guys attack him from behind, surprising Noro. The students were creeped out by those men. They were acting strange. Noro dodges that attack and hits the guy in the back. The other guy attacks him, but he counters the iron bat with his legs, and while they were distracted, he punches them. They start to panic and attack him together. Gunsorn was watching all his lackeys getting beaten up by Noro and was scared now. In a few minutes, Noro beats all of those guys. Noro calls Gunsorn to come to him in an angry voice. The bully sees a bottle, breaks it, and uses it as a weapon to threaten to kill Noro. Noro was also furious, but their fight was disrupted by some screams. All the students were screaming to save them. Under that cloak, those guys were monsters and they were now attacking the students without hiding their identities. The whole hallway was filled with them. Yungyong, who was in the nurse's office, hears the scream and wakes up. He calls for the teacher but no one was there. Then he senses something behind him. A monster surrounded by a dark aura comes there. Noro and the bully stop fighting and were shocked to see what was going on. Noro suspects that it might be those monsters who are after him. They had also come to the school. While he was distracted by all this, the bully attacks him but Noro closes the door and locks him inside. The bully was yelling at him to let him out. Noro says if you don't want to die, don't come outside. But the bully was still furious when he notices a window. The teacher was angry at the students for causing a ruckus in the hallway. Then he sees a boy get sliced by one of the monsters in front of his eyes. The teacher froze with fear. The monster attacks the teacher as well, and now all the teachers were also scared. The students on the upper floor were still not believing it. Luna heard them talking and runs to the lower floor. While she was running, a monster comes in front of her suddenly and attacks her. But she reveals her secret weapon which she had with her all this time. And with that, she rips that monster into pieces. In the hallway, there were many students who were either unconscious or dead. A monster attacks a guy, and he asks his friends to save him, but they were too afraid to do that and they run away. As it was going to kill him, Noro distracts the monster towards him. The monster recognizes him and leaves that student to attack Noro. Noro was taking it somewhere without civilians. On the way, The bully attacks him again, but Naro dodges the attack. The monster catches the bully and slams his face on the wall. The monster says to Naro if he ran, it would kill the guy. The bully yells at Naro to help him, to which Naro replies, why should he? The bully was scared to death and didn't know what to say. He apologizes to Naro and says that he'd be his lackey for the rest of his life. He was desperately screaming for help but sees that Naro was gone. But Naro wasn't gone. Instead, he attacks the monster so fast that it wasn't able to defend itself. The bully sees the monster turning into ashes and asks Hanaro if he really was just a human. As he was going to answer that, a monster comes there flying. It was already beaten by someone else. Naro wonders who could it be and was shocked to see Luna fighting the monsters. Luna calls them stupid for just standing there. She knocks the bully out and they talk about the situation. Naro kept asking her about her identity, but she told him to lure these monsters to the gym. Naro was again shocked at how she knew that. Many monsters come there. Luna says him to move now. Naro jumps through the window and goes straight to the gym. He was wondering why those monsters weren't following him and thought that their plan failed. But as he sees above, they were coming up to him. He somehow defends himself against them and realizes that these monsters don't have a mind of their own. They are being controlled by someone else. And they were also much stronger than the monsters he had faced before. He was struggling to get them off him when Luna comes there, binds them in her wire-type weapon, and in a flash gets them off him. Naro asks her how she managed to defeat all those monsters in the school hallway. She told him to leave the chit-chat for later because more monsters were coming there. There were a lot of them coming through the window and soon the whole gym was filled with them. As the monsters were going to attack them, they start to merge together and turned into a huge monster. They were wondering how they were going to defeat that monster when Luna gets an idea. She distracts the monster toward herself, and as the monster comes close to her, she pulls the curtain, blocking its eyesight. And now it was Naro's turn. He was hanging to the ceiling and used his brute force to break the iron ceiling and makes it fall on top of the monster. In the school hallway, that special demon was carrying Jingyong. He notices the ashes of that dying monster coming out from the gym and knew where they were. In the gym, after killing that big monster, they were planning to get out of there quickly. But then Naro hears Jingyong's voice. He was heavily injured and was barely standing. Naro was going to help him, but Luna stops him, saying there was something strange about his shadow. It was exceptionally big. But seeing Jingyong in pain, he goes to him anyway. When he asks him if he was okay, Jingyong told him to run away. We see a hand coming out of Jingyong's shadow and it stabs them both, not giving them any chance to fight back. It was that monster from earlier. They fall to the ground and Jingyong asks for Naro's forgiveness, and that's all he could speak. Naro was in extreme shock. The memories of what had happened to his grandma that day started to flood in his mind, of how those monsters killed her back then. He thinks about when he was a kid, how he used to celebrate his birthday with his grandma, and Kid Naro wishes to live with her forever. Seeing Naro get up after that lethal attack, both the monster and Luna were shocked. His eyes were rolled out and he wasn't able to see anything. He calls for his grandma in his dream and sees her dead on the table. When he tries to grab her hand, it turns into ashes. While turning to ash, his grandma told him to protect all the entrances. Naro was frustrated with not knowing who he really was, and in anger, blue flames start coming out of his body. His eyes start glowing. They were shocked and confused to see the blue fire. The monster was certain that he was unconscious and was overwhelmed by his strength, which wasn't like that a moment ago. As he approaches to kill the monster, the whole gym starts to burn in blue flames, and soon the whole gym was engulfed in cold fire. The monster was terrified and says it was impossible. Naro freezes the monster using his cold breath and shatters his whole body into pieces. Luna was just standing there, stunned, watching all this. Naro collapses with exhaustion.